Welcome back to this short series on Ecclesiastes. Today we're going to look at Ecclesiastes chapters 4 through to 6. So if you have a Bible, please open it up. And if not, then listen along as I read for us, and then we have some time reflecting. Again, I observed all the acts of oppression being done under the sun. Look at the tears of those who are oppressed. They have no one to comfort them. Power is with those who oppress them. They have no one to comfort them. So I admired the dead, who have already died, more than the living who are still alive. But better than either of them is the one who has not yet existed, who has not seen the evil activity that is done under the sun. I saw that all labor and all skillful work is due to a man's jealousy of his friend. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. The fool folds his arms and consumes his own flesh. Better one handful with rest than two handfuls with effort and a pursuit of the wind. Again, I saw futility under the sun. There is a person without a companion, without even a son or brother, and though there is no end to all his struggles, his eyes are still not content with riches. So, who am I struggling for, he asks, and depriving myself from good? This too is futile and a miserable task. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their efforts. For if either falls, his companion can lift him up. But pity the one who falls without another to lift him up. Also, if two lie down together, they can keep warm. But how can one person alone keep warm? And if someone overpowers one person, two can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. Better is a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer pays attention to warnings. For he came from prison to be king, even though he was born poor in his kingdom. I saw all the living who move about under the sun follow a second youth who succeeds him. There is no limit to all the people who were before them, yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Better to draw near in obedience than to offer sacrifice as fools do, for they ignorantly do wrong. Do not be hasty to speak, and do not be impulsive to make a speech before God. God is in heaven, and you are on earth. So let your words be few. For dreams result from much work, and a fool's voice from many words. When you make a vow to God, don't delay fulfilling it, because he does not delight in fools. Fulfill what you vow. Better that you do not vow than you vow and not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth bring guilt on you, and do not say in the presence of the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry with your words and destroy the work of your hands? For many dreams bring futility, so do many words. Therefore, fear God. If you see oppression of the poor and perversion of justice and righteousness in the province, don't be astonished of the situation, because one official protects another official, and higher officials protect them. The profit from the land is taken by all. The king is served by the field. The one who loves money is never satisfied with money, and whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is futile. When good things increase, the one who consume them multiply. What then is the profit to the owner, except to gaze at them with his eyes? The sleep of the worker is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich permit no sleep. There is a sickening tragedy I have seen under the sun, wealth kept by its owner to his harm. That wealth has lost in a bad venture. So, when he fathered a son, he was empty-handed. As he came from his mother's womb, so he will go again. Naked as he came, he will take nothing for his efforts that he can carry in his hands. This too is sickening. Exactly as he comes, so he will go. What does the one gain who struggles for the wind? What is more, he eats in darkness all his days, with much sorrow, sickness, and anger. Here is what I have seen to be good. It is appropriate to eat, drink, and experience good in all the labor one does under the sun during the few days of his life God has given him, because that is his reward. Furthermore, every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also allowed him to enjoy them, take his reward, and rejoice in his labor. This is a gift from God. For he does not often consider the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. Here is a tragedy I have observed under the sun, and it weighs heavily on humanity. God gives a man riches, wealth, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all he desires for himself, but God does not allow him to enjoy them. Instead, a stranger will enjoy them. A man may father 100 children and live many years. No matter how long he lives, if he is not satisfied by good things and does not even have a proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For he comes in futility and he goes in darkness, and his name is shrouded in darkness. Though a stillborn child does not see the sun and is not conscious, it has more rest than he. And if he lives 1,000 years twice, but does not experience happiness, do not both go to the same place? All man's labor is for his stomach, yet the appetite is never satisfied. What advantage, then, does the wise man have over the fool? What advantage is there for the poor person over the one who knows how to conduct himself before others? Better what the eyes see than wandering desire. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. Whatever exists has given its name long ago, and it is known that man is. But he is not able to contend with the one stronger than he. For when there are many words, they increase futility. What is the advantage for man? For who knows what is good for man in life, in the few days of his futile life that he spends like a shadow? Who can tell man what will happen after him under the sun? Now these 3 chapters are very interesting because they really are, in essence, a set of proverbs, a set of short sayings that are coupled together by the teacher in order to really show us the truth about how difficult and how futile the pursuits of people can be. There's this thing that keeps getting repeated, and I think it's quite strong language that's being used. But you notice that every once in a while he repeats this little saying in order to help us to really understand. He says something like, I have witnessed a tragedy that I've observed under the sun, and it weighs heavily on humanity. And the reason why that keeps being done is because as he goes through, the teacher, and sees all of life and all the things of life, he realizes that there is tragedy after tragedy. And in chapters 4 to 6, that tragedy is specifically being thought through in terms of people trying to better themselves, trying to make better versions of themselves, trying to grow themselves. It's the self-help craze. It's self-actualization. It's the type of thing that a lot of people in the world strive for. And he's not saying in and of itself that striving to be better is bad, but he's saying there are limitations. And the things that we often want to strive for and strive after, the things that we think are so important because they are the defining moments of our success, actually those things are temporary. And they have an end. And so there is absolute futility in the chasing after the wind for us to do something like this. And actually what the teacher wants to start by telling us is the value and the meaning of life is that actually it is better to have not existed than to have chased after these pathetic, useless things that don't account for anything. Why be wealthy? Why have this sort of wisdom? Why do these sorts of things? It is better for one to have not gone through any of these struggles and not seen the conclusion of what these things bring on earth. It is better, as harsh as it sounds, it is better for you not to have been born. And I think part of the reason why this is the conclusion that the teacher comes to is because the foundation of this idea behind wanting to be better and better ourselves, actually the teacher hits the nail on the head very quickly. Chapter 4, verse 4, I saw that all labor and all skillful work is due to man's jealousy of his friend. The foundation of being a better version of yourself is to be better than someone else. It's envy. It's not that we want to be better for the sake of being better. We want to be better so that we will be better than the other person. It's a rat race, it's a comparison. As long as we're better than that guy, then all is okay. And the problem is that what happens is that you try and get better and better and better, and you realize that it's a chasing after the wind, because you will never be satisfied and there will be no joy that comes from it. So let's hear a little bit about the sort of wisdom that we get. Let's have a look at some of the scenarios that are spoken about and the conclusion that the teacher brings. So here's the first one. What about working hard? Well, actually, working hard comes to basically no good end. And so, in one sense, there's no need to be working hard, because the working hard doesn't help. And then we think, okay, well, if working hard doesn't help, what about giving up and living a withdrawn life? What about going to a secluded area and just living peacefully and just, in a sense, avoiding all things? Actually, no. The withdrawn life is what fools do. Fools do those things. And so that's not good either. Well, what about relationships then? Actually, here we see a little bit of wisdom on relationships, is that relationships are good. And it is a good thing for us to reflect on, even just for a moment, because our relationships are good because we are created for community. We are created for relationships. We are not created to just be individuals. And that is very important. And the wisdom that is given is, well, actually you can help each other. And your work is better off. And you can protect each other. And these are things that happens when you have companionship, when you have relationship. And so these things are important. What about wealth and fame? Well, actually, in that little hypothetical scenario there between the king and the pauper, the reality is that wealth and fame doesn't achieve much. In fact, it's the other way around. Better to be wise than to be a leader and famous, because it accounts for nothing. It's all like chasing after the wind. And then you think, well, what about being rich? Here's the problem with being rich. No matter how rich you become, you are never satisfied, because you are always thinking about how much more rich you can be. That's what it's like, isn't it? You get the promotion and you think, well, when's the next promotion? You get into a place where you are more well off and more stable and secure, as much as money can give you that sort of stability. And the next thing you think about is, but I can't have this thing and I can't have that thing, and I still don't have security, and if I had $1 million, that would be better, and if I had 10 million, that would be even better than that. But when you have 10 million, then you're envious and you're looking for the 20, and when you have 20, you're looking for the 50, and when you have 50, you're looking for the 100, and in the end, you just keep looking and searching, and where is contentment to be found? And what about pleasure? Actually, the teacher here says that the best you can hope for in your pleasure is to enjoy the fruit of your labor. Because otherwise, nothing else can be achieved. You're searching after future achievements, they account for nothing. You continue to search after future engagements and future achievements and future things that will get you more success and that will get you more pleasure. And all of those things, they account for nothing. You see, I think what the teacher is trying to say in summary is, what you have is better than any dreams for what you will hope for. Let me say that again. What you have is better than any dreams for what you will hope for. And the reason for that is because your appetite will never be satisfied. And the reason for that is because the fundamental nature of your appetite, it is based on envy. It is based on being better than the other. The comparison is the wrong one. And so the reality is that things will always be like chasing after the wind, because there is always someone who's better than you. There is always someone who is richer than you, who has more pleasure than you, who you look at and you envy and you covet what they have. The bigger house, the better family, the more children, the more money, the more investments, the more property, the more whatever. And it is all chasing after the wind, because you will miss out on the enjoyment that you can have with the fruit of your labor, because you are seeking after things that will never give you long-lasting pleasure. And you hear this time and time again in many, many stories of many, many people, perhaps that you know. Someone will chase after more things in order to provide for their family, and more things in order to do more things and be greater, and therefore get more money and more security. And in the process, they lose their family. They lose their relationships. They lose their joy. In fact, there's that beautiful line, isn't there, that actually the one who is poor, the one who is the worker, sleeps well. But the one who is rich, he never sleeps. And in the end, I think in chapters 4 to 6, the teacher is giving us this ultimate conclusion, this beautiful conclusion, that there is one thing, more than all the other things, that is worth pursuing. And that is pursuing the reality of looking after your relationship with God, of being cautious in God's presence and in God's sight. Because actually your relationship with God, that matters. And so you ought to be in awe of God. You ought to revere God. You ought to see Him for who He truly is. You show respect for God. You keep your vow. You make sure you are right with God in terms of your relationship. And that matters more than all things. And in the end, here's the big reason that that matters. And it's a beautiful line, and it's such a simple line. Chapter 5, verse 2, do not be hasty to speak, and do not be impulsive to make speech before God. God is in heaven, and you are on earth. So let your words be few. And at the end of chapter 5, verse 7, therefore, fear God. Our fear of God is, in fact, the beginning of wisdom. Our fear of God is the way in which we then understand all things. We have perspective for all things. And the reality is that as we see the seeking after better things and being better than we were and helping ourselves and moving forward in life, what God exposes is the reality of our ignorance, is the reality of our inability to do anything that will be satisfying and long-lasting, so that we don't trust in ourselves, but we trust in Him. We trust in Him who can give us those things which can't be bought and can't be earned and can't be valued, and all the things that we try and strive that we just cannot do on our own. And so the teacher here gives us wisdom in the form of little proverbs, little sayings, in order to help us to see that there is futility for searching and chasing after things on our own. And we ought to take stock and take joy in the things that we do well and that God gives us enjoyment in. And ultimately, we ought to most maintain and most seek after our good relationship with our God and Creator, who in the end gives us what we ourselves cannot ascertain or achieve.